Hi, everybody, and welcome to the next transmission here on the Elder Immersion. This is one that wasn't planned actually at the beginning of the whole process, but emerged through the wonderful artwork which we're going to be sharing with you today. And it's my great pleasure to introduce from within the Elder Immersion, Shirley Shantel. How are you doing, Shirley?
I'm really good, and I hope you're well too, David.
I'm doing super good. So we are conversing at opposite ends of the day. This is quite early in the morning here in Mexico, but you're in Singapore, right? And I think it's getting close to bedtime.
Well, I sleep late, so it's not too bad.
Good. Well, look, so this is something that we talked about right at the beginning of the immersion. In fact, when you started sharing your beautiful images that came to you off the back of, I think, eating one elder gummy before the immersion started, and this whole incredible series of artworks were downloaded, which you started sharing with myself and Bella beforehand. We were completely captivated by them, and we're very encouraged to see more coming through. So it's kind of cool that this has come about today, because the tone for today with the Mind Wave spell is about collaboration, and the glyph of the star is about art and beauty. So we couldn't have timed it better. And as always, as I think we're all realizing with the Elder Mother, and indeed with our friend Dandelion in the background, everything happens in divine timing and in the perfect moment. So let's start, Shirley, by perhaps getting you to share more about how the process started for you with the Elder Gummy, and then the channeling. And then we're going to have a look at some of the pictures and talk about those, and then weave in some more of the esoteric threads that we've been understanding. So yeah, please do share. How did this all come about for you?
Yeah, so, I started the Artemisis immersion first time ever, not knowing what to expect. And then right at the end of it, you mentioned Elder, and I thought, oh, I would love to be there for it. And because it was so easy to get hold of an Elder gummy, I decided to buy one of those kids ones and just, start eating it. And before I knew it, I started developing this really weird cough. And I'm one of those, I've been really blessed. I have a great immunity system. I rarely get sick. So I knew this wasn't a thing. It wasn't like an illness. And I understood very quickly that it was a clearing from my throat chakra, which has been blocked for years, which I think a lot of us are experiencing. So there was this whole sort of an unfolding that needed to happen, and I just thought, I'm going to trust it. I'm just going to keep eating it and believe that Elder Mother doesn't hate me. I'm just going to keep going with it. And then before I knew it, I set the intention, and I started channeling. I didn't even really understood what the stories of Elder Mother was at the beginning, because I was so unfamiliar with its story. But as I went on, it's like the artwork started to show me so many themes. And then as the immersion went on, I listened to what you said and Pete said, and I was like, oh, so this is that piece, and so that is that. So it's been a really beautiful unfolding. And, she's wise. She's very wise, and she has her own plans.
Wow, yeah. And this is I know you weren't able to make it for the live call that we did to the Asia Pacific group the other day, but this did come up about the gummies, and it's something that's very intriguing, because both myself and Bella have seen this from different perspectives about high potency medicine that can be delivered with either with the syrup contained, or the essence, or the tincture, into a tiny little gummy. And I think it's so beautiful that you had this experience, because it shows that this is possible, that we can have a deep connection from something very small, but hopefully something very potent. But also, having chatted to you before the immersion, it was very clear to both of us here that your field is very clean. You have a very aligned connection to spirit and to your spirit crew. And so when we're in that nice clean space, then we can have these incredibly strong connections very quickly. So this is super intriguing for lots of reasons. But yeah, please continue more sharing about the process and what started to come through. And if you want to share some of your images, that would be great as well.
Mm-hmm. And just to add to that gummy piece, like as you were sharing it just sort of came to me that it's not supposed to be so hard. Sometimes we think we've got to pick all of the stuff and then spend 3 months trying to do a tincture. And while all of that is a process that should be honored, it doesn't always have to be so difficult for some of us who are not in the environment. And life is getting more and more fast-paced, I believe that the plants would encourage us to slow down, but they're not necessarily wanting us to go into hardship. Like it's not supposed to be so hard. And they're helping us
Mhm.
in many ways. So it's very adaptable in that sense, I think.
Yeah, actually, just to come back to you about that, I think that's also a really important point. And as somebody who I guess is kind of traditional in medicine practices, for me, the idea of collecting the plants and making the medicines, that is a really important process. And maybe in years gone by, I would have been kind of aghast at the idea of it all being put into a gummy. But we are moving, I think, into a different space, and certainly working with the dandelion and artemisia immersions and plants before, I went through a bit of a process of letting go, and the plants were actually quite insistent about this. It's just like, just tell the people doing the immersion to call the medicine to them and let them see what turns up for them, because it will be the most appropriate form of the medicine. And this is also very quantum, very higher mind, eagle's perch. It's not being attached to how does it happen, just letting it happen. And I think that many of us who've done these immersions have seen this incredible process of plants, medicine, in whatever forms, turning up often through random channels, but equally all still coming. And so I think this is also a part of the process we're going through, is letting go of old belief systems. How we've always done things doesn't mean we have to throw them out with the bathwater, so to speak, but it does show that there is an evolution of how we work with these things, and not to make it somehow disrespectful, like maybe some of the Western medicine that likes to take a plant apart in the laboratory, isolate a few compounds, put a patent on it, and then sell it. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about how to be more holistic, but with more high potency, which I think is really interesting and seems to me very much of the Aquarian age. And I also completely concur, Shirley, this is not meant to be a hard process. In fact, the thing that makes it hard is us personally resisting the process. The plants
Exactly.
never want to hurt us, from what I've seen, right? They don't want us to have to go through hardship. They don't want us to suffer. But if we resist the process, it's us that creates the suffering, because we're stopping the plants from doing their work. So I think they're really important points. Yeah.
Yeah. Agreed.
Cool. So okay, let's I know we're on the same page of many things because we've talked already quite a bit before we got on the recording. So let's maybe pull up one of the first images that you'd like to share, because they're all really cool, and even the ones that weren't channeled for the Elder Immersion. Exactly. I love the Venus Star Point channeling. That was beautiful. Yeah, I really like that one. So what would you like to show us first?
And the as well. Okay, so I'm going to do a share screen. Okay, let me know if you see this.
Yeah, looking good. So I love this one. I think this is one of the first ones you sent through, and yeah, I'd like you to talk about it from your perspective, because I'm intrigued. I mean, it's just incredible. The detail, Shirley, is mind-blowing.
Yeah, it's so when this whole thing started and I sat down with the intention, so I should say, when I channel, I actually don't have a vision of what it's going to look like. I may know that it's a circle because I need to start structurally, but I have no idea what the content is. So I see it as it unfolds, and basically I really get to see it when it's done. So the first thing that came through for the entire set was actually the outer rim, which I kind of call a wreath. And I almost already see the vines and the plant leaves and the flowers and the berries sort of kind of in there. But the most beautiful thing about it is how it appeared. So because I process a lot of things through the feelings. So when it appeared, it was just like tapestry. Like there was this whole silken feeling, and it just kept flowing and flowing. And I had no idea what it was going to be like. And it just appeared like magic. It didn't stop. It didn't sort of pause. I didn't have to think twice. And the whole wreath appeared. And then it said, I want to be there. And I want to be there for every single piece. So then I started to work on the inner piece, and then as you see, like each of the pieces, they differ on the inside. The colors were not picked by me, like spirit guides the colors. So the colors also give me a clue as to what it's supposed to be and what kind of energy it would share. So as we know, blue corresponds to the throat chakra as well. There's a lot of expression here, but this particular blue is really magical. It's that nighttime, almost translucent kind of a glow. And then the whole piece started to come to me. Okay, these are nocturnal pieces. They're not sunshiny pieces like dandelion would be. These are a lot more nocturnal. And then it's about finding these fireflies and these magical orbs that are coming. And so that was a lot about the beginning of it. And then each piece started to bring its own story that, then unraveled, which I think you guys shared with the keywords as well.
Wow, I love the colors, and yeah, I totally concur about the blue. I mean, the thing that jumped out to me first about that was it had a very elven kind of otherworld feel, which often to me is very kind of silvery, or yeah, even like this translucent blue. And I'm also intrigued now that you're sharing more about the reef. I hadn't quite clocked the berries and the leaves in the green and the purple on the outside, so that's added another layer for me now. Wow. And the other thing that really struck both Bella and I at the beginning was it felt like this was light encoded quantum plant language, something like that. I feel like there's almost a language written in all of the designs that is perhaps as yet uncoded by us, but somehow has been channeled. But it feels like we're communicating with another aspect of a plant being that, beyond the 3D world is clearly a very intelligent being. So, wow.
Yeah.
Do you have
When
any
I
other
first
feelings about this picture yourself, Shirley?
I do. When I first started channeling in general, and it really happened really suddenly, I understood that I was channeling some kind of a star language or a light language, as I think popular culture would call it. But I had no idea what light language was. I spoke to you in our session about me channeling flowers, and I was like, am I really doing this? Are the flowers really speaking to me? Is this even possible? And what I got from that series of that, and that was a series of over 20 pieces, was that the flowers connected us cosmically. Like, they're not just flowers on Earth, they have a connection to the star system as well. And they were also a channel that sort of like a bridge, and it's a way of us getting to the stars without going into the astrology. And they definitely presented the doorway. So when I started doing the Elder series, I instinctively knew that what Elder Mother would do is that she would open the portal to where we needed to go, whether it was magic or whether it was a star language, even the Pleiades and the Lemurian energies. So all of that was kind of what I understood about, all of the plants, including the flowers and all. They are much more connected than we think they are.
Yeah. Right. Absolutely. And you touched on something interesting. Of course, your sort of moniker or avatar name is Lemurian Dreamweaver, and the energy of Lemuria has been coming up quite a lot for quite a few people during this immersion. And somewhere in the background also Atlantis. I often find that the energy around Atlantis is quite hidden, I think probably for some fairly good reasons that may yet come to light before this great turning of the wheel. But I'm still very much sat with the idea that maybe what we have all been calling Lemuria, which was, as I understand it, never really a three-dimensional civilization or construct. It was a much more etheric or even astral maybe world, but somehow existing here on the earth. And when I think about that, etheric, and maybe Lemurian people had their origins in the Pleiades. Maybe even Elder is a Pleiadian star mother. So there are many things about this, but as this immersion has gone on in the same way as happened with the dandelion and the artemisias, it feels as if the star origins of the plants are wanting to reveal themselves, which is something profound and I think very new in this regard. And for sure, maybe the information still needs to be revealed, but I do feel that there's a strong connection between the elves, the other world, Lemuria, and the Pleiadians, and the Elder is very much a part of that energy. And I think that this image that first came through brought all of that with me. And the other thing that I just want to say, which I think has jumped out a lot of people, is there's a very strong like ice dragon energy in here. And I'm wondering, how does that link to Elder as well? It's very clear for me that this one is dragon energy. Do you have anything to say around that?
Yeah, so Bella said the same. When I did a series on Sirius earlier this year, the Ice Dragon was the first guardian that I met. So I literally saw her through the piece, and she said to me, I would be your guardian and I would open the portal for you to get to all the other star systems that you need to go, and I will offer you protection. So I think protection is one of the keywords for Elder as well, because as you said, the energy came through so strongly. Um, in when you spoke about the Artemisias being uncorruptible, I sort of felt safe with it. But when Elder Mother stepped in, I sort of understood, like, she was saying that, not all magic is good magic. Like, it can be seductive, even the not so good stuff. But what she will offer is the clarity to tell the difference, to discern, and the protection to keep on the right path. So it's almost as if I were to give it imagery, you would be walking through a dark wood and there would be orbs, but not every orb is a good orb in that sense. And what Elder Mother does is she opens a path for you to show you where you need to go.
Mm. Wow, I totally agree. And it's interesting that you put it in that context, because that's kind of how I've understood it too. With the Artemisias, they will not allow you to work with them to do bad magic. There are some witchy plants that you can do that with, and certainly many of the entheogens can be used for corruptible purposes, as we've talked about before. But what I like about the Elder is that she takes that kind of basis of incorruptibility and then takes it to the next level and shows you either magic that's hidden around you. This is why I feel like this piece came up with Elder at this time, because collectively we're going through what I think is the revealing of deep hidden magic that has been used against all of humanity for thousands of years. Inversions, illusions, manipulations, distortions, all of that has been done pretty much with astral magic and timeline manipulation. And as we come to the end of this, even though many people on the planet will never be able to get their head to any of this, it doesn't really matter. In the end, there only has to be one witness to it all, because it's quantum. And if there's 1,000 witnesses, if there's a million witnesses who see all of this, then the magic is being released. And that in the end is the most important thing. And even though many of us have gone through this, and I know we're going to get into this piece about the throat chakra a bit later, I think it's really important that finally many of us are being able to express our artwork, our words, our writing, who we really are. And we no longer feel that we're going to be laughed at or persecuted. So I think this is a really important part of the process with Elder. So what's the next piece you'd like to share, Shirley? I love that one. I think that might be my favorite, but I like them all.
I know, you said the same thing about the last piece as well. Okay, let me go on to the next piece. All right, so this is the second piece. Well, the second piece, I thought it was special in the sense that I got a lot of goddess energy from this piece. Like, it was one of the pieces that really made this like deeply feminine. And it, even though it's purple, for some reason I got fire energy from this as well. And I had the vision of cave drawings. There was this rather ancient energy that said, we've been here through the generations. We've witnessed the changes through the generations, through the worlds, and we've been recorded in caves. You just don't know it, like that piece of that historical piece. So there was this whole like witnessing. I don't know, if you stare close enough at the center column, I swear I see fire and I see a goddess in there. So I don't know, what do you see?
Well, I see many things. I find this piece intriguing because it kind of offers slightly different juxtaposed energies. Yes, the purple, and even the very sort of what I would say is almost flowery design of some of the language speaks to me very much of feminine energy. But then the structure of it, the shape, holds a different energy altogether. And yeah, the central column also is very intriguing. There's a lot of information there also. And it makes me also think maybe more of like lace work or something like that, intricate designs, but very sort of feminine. I find this piece very intriguing, to be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you have anything that you can say around the shape of the center of the design? Because it's very, I don't know, I can't find the words. Right? It's something
You're gonna
I still have
laugh,
to see.
but I think it looks like a spaceship. like it looks like a spacecraft to me.
Um,
Not in the sense of that UFO thing, but if
no,
a
no, no.
spacecraft were to take shape, like the wings, the sort of central pod, yeah.
Ah. Yes, I'm not laughing. I'm actually agreeing, because that is kind of, but because of the colors of it, the purple, it doesn't immediately make you think of that. So I feel like this piece really requires you to sit and have maybe sort of quite almost opposing thoughts. It's like very feminine, like purple, but then like a spaceship. It's like you wouldn't normally put the two things together, but you're right. Yes, and it feels like the central part is also an opening into something bigger, like a portal.
Yes.
Wow.
So if you
Yeah.
think of the Pleiades star mothers, for example, I mean, they were deeply feminine, but they are
Mhm.
definitely cosmic and galactic. So, goddess energy and spacecraft, they kind of go together in a way.
They do, right? Yeah. I mean, we often think of goddess energy perhaps being more earth-centric, but of course, that's just perhaps a too, restrictive view. And I love that. Yeah, that resonates with me, Shirley.
Mhm. Okay, let's go on to the next piece because I am conscious of time. Let me see if I can do this in a clever way. All right, we're gonna do this and flip this way.
Oh,
Now I wanted
yeah.
to touch on this piece because you mentioned Atlantis, and even I think
Mm,
the first piece was a lot more Lemurian. Um,
mm,
Part of the energy of what I realized at the end of nearer the end of this immersion is the idea of exposing core wounds, exposing them not because it's a ruthless thing to do, but because they need to be acknowledged in order to be transmuted. And this piece speaks exactly about the transmutation of the dark. So woundings, pain, like things that you had shut down in yourself because maybe you couldn't bear a memory, or you couldn't bear a certain impression you had of yourself, and there was shame or guilt, these emotions that keep us suppressing ourselves. And this piece spoke a lot about transmuting it. It doesn't want to destroy it. It's not about getting rid of it or hiding it. It's really about bringing it into the light so that it can then be transmuted. And when I was doing this piece, I had two keywords that really jumped out at me. The first was grace, like the grace of actually going through this process. And then the phrase that came to me is the darkness is needed. It's needed. It's a part of the polarity. It's a part of everything. Like it doesn't exist, like light doesn't exist without the darkness. Everything was already created, and the idea is not for us to suppress any part of it, but actually to embrace it and then try to transmute it to a higher frequency. So
mhm.
this, when you said Atlantis, this piece sort of came to me to say, talk about me as well, because I think a lot of why people talk about Lemuria and not about Atlantis is because Atlantis had a fall, and it was painful for a lot of humanity to witness that fall. It was destructive. It was, it was sort of very hard. And it's almost as if we lost part of our humility and our humanity during that process. But, Atlantis wasn't all that bad. There were good people in Atlantis too, and a lot of them went to Egypt. They tried to preserve the knowledge. It's still there. It's waiting for us to, come to it, to be ready enough for it to reveal to us. So, I think it's time we stopped avoiding talking about things like Atlantis and stop framing it in a horrible way and sort of reframe the narrative so that we could see all aspects of it as well.
Wow, yeah, quite a few things I want to just comment on there. First of all, let's talk about the image. I love the gold. It very much makes me think of Egypt. And yeah, when we talked about this before, what I've understood about Atlantis has changed over the years, and some of this is informed from a conversation I had with the Ascended Master Zach, and he said that Lemuria was never in physical form, but he also said Atlantis wasn't either. He said that you'll never be able to find the physical remains of Atlantis, But for sure, the same as in the other world, like we can go to places on the planet and see etheric structures still in place. For sure, you know, where you're going in November, Iceland is very much like that. What you see as kind of fire and ice and molten rock and lava fields looks quite stark and desolate. But if you are able to access the etheric realms there, what you see are elven palaces and cathedrals and all kinds of beautiful structures. So it's like sometimes it can be startling to see the difference between the 3D and the more astral or etheric. And what I think about Atlantis is that somehow Atlantis was not quite Lemuria, not quite Earth as we are now, but something in between, where some beings were perhaps trying to become more manifest into the 3D world from a more etheric space. And just like the world we live in today, I feel like we're very much right on the cusp of another Atlantean piece, with the use of the 5G and the Starlink, and maybe who knows what technology is being used on us and maybe on Mother Earth. But again, you know, we cannot say that everybody in this world is bad. And so I would concur that in the Atlantean world, not everybody was bad either. But as we are coming to the final conclusions of all of these proto-Earths or proto-environments that we lived in, Lemuria, Atlantis, the other world, however we look at them, what's clear to me is that we are now finishing a process that began a long time ago. And some of us have done the entire journey, and some people maybe have dropped in and out at various points. But what I like about this image, it does have a broodingness to it. I feel very much the presence of a being, quite a powerful being, alien for sure. But then within that kind of bigger context, I also see more friendly faces and beings through the central column. So this speaks to me, actually, this speaks to me very much of another planet, to be honest. So maybe that other planet is more Atlantis. That's what we're getting, is an energy coming through from not necessarily a different planet per se, but a different realm for sure. Perhaps one that was much more extraterrestrial or alien. And I think we're getting to a place, many of us, in understanding that not all extraterrestrial alien stuff is about flying UFO discs in the sky or Hollywood movies. In fact, many of us, probably all of us, have alien DNA in us. And I think that that's part of what we're remembering, is that we are human beings, but carrying probably 12 strands of DNA from 12 different races, maybe those races even mapped out in the zodiac. And as the rainbow tribe that humans were designed to be, we are trying to harmonize all of the different alien strands, because lots of these families, these beings, these races also did not have harmonious relationships with themselves or with others. And what I come to understand was that we as humans are the ultimate kind of rainbow tribe, and that we're trying to bring all of this harmonization back to all of these different star beings. So very interesting. Yeah, wow, big piece. Yeah, please continue, Shirley.
All right. It doesn't allow me to do this. All right, we can do that.
Oof, this is a cool one too. This is
yes,
so much.
This is really interesting. When it came through, I don't know about you, I actually saw the hand of Hamza in this. I thought it was quite literal, which again brought back that protection piece. In fact, protection is the keyword that has come up for me throughout the entire immersion. But this one also hinted at the idea of purity. So as you said, we need to clear the entire channel in order for us to become, you know, clearer vessels. And that purity really came through this piece as I was channeling it. Like there were parts of it that I can't really see clearly, but it was just there. And it was all these layers, like realms and dimensions that would be open to us if we could get to that place of purity. So it almost it almost feels like it's offering us to really connect to our heart space, to really reach that point of clarity in order for us to become the purest version of ourselves, which actually tied into what you began the immersion with, talking about Venus and the choice point.
I mean, the thing that jumps off the image immediately for me is I get two stroke three things. The first is Tibet stroke Shambhala, and the second is very strong cactus energy. For me, there's a lot of cactus coming through with this one. Maybe it's the color, maybe even the shape. But what I like what you're saying about the purity is that, you know, we have this idea that Shambhala was this mystical place where everything was already pure and untainted, and maybe that's a memory of the higher notes of the Atlantean or Lemurian worlds. And the color is just Yeah, I love the color. Very, very strong. But this to me feels very high vibration. And maybe that's why I'm getting the energy of Tibet and Shambhala from it.
Maybe. And I kind of really love that Tibetan piece. I didn't see it at the beginning, but Tibet has been coming up for me as well in terms of a lot of use of mantra. So not in a religious sense, but in the sense of reminding us that the voice and sound is a powerful way for us to align ourselves and attune ourselves to the frequency, which is a way of getting to pure frequency. So and because we also know that Taurus, as we're heading into the eclipse, also rules the throat and sound. So it seems like these are just threads that are weaving around all of these stories.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit beforehand about the throat chakra, and this I think is a good time to bring this into the discussion because it's something that's been coming up a lot for many of us during this immersion. And as I was saying to you beforehand, both myself and Bella both have scratchy throats, coughs, cackling, even clearing, which is just like, wow, this hasn't happened to me for a long time. And first of all, I do think that there is a lot of unhelpful stuff out there, which maybe has been spread over the last couple of weeks. Zach did also mention on one of our calls that humanity would have to go through a collective immunization against a series of different types of frequencies, we can say, bioweapons, lurgies, gremlins, however we want to call them. But this whole piece of, first of all, around the chest and releasing, I think we talked about that on some of the calls, about the grief, about the mother wounds, and about the big clearing of stuff. That definitely was going on a lot in the first few days for many of us. But what's kind of emerged more in the second half of the immersion, I think, is more about the throat chakra and not being able to speak our truth, or maybe speaking with distortion because of, our psychic chakra is blocked. And yeah, you said it yourself, a lot of what's come up in the discussions with the other teachers is about this idea of expectorance and trying to get something out. And I feel that everything we've just been talking about, again, is another way of understanding that Elder wants us to really clear the terrain, really even get out the stuff that's super hidden, maybe even from past lives, other timelines, so that we can be in that total place of purity.
Yeah.
Was there more you wanted to say around that, Shirley? Because you pulled up some interesting pieces, I think, that about core wounds and also about this Taurus Scorpio axis. Maybe you'd like to share some of your thoughts around that too.
Yes. So because I heard Pete and Rebecca speak about expectorants and all of that, and it started to become very clear to me that, most of us alive today, we've grown up in the age of suppression, really. I mean, society had an idea of what we were supposed to be, and most of us tried to conform to it. And now with Pluto going into Aquarius very soon, we're seeing a lot of dismantling of old programmings, and the whole point of dismantling everything that was built is because we need to build something new, but we can't get to that point if we don't know who we are. Can you imagine building a new world, but you're not clear about who you really are and what you represent, and then you don't speak it out even if you do? Then what kind of world, what is the new earth that we're creating? Like, it cannot be. It has to be, release and let out through this ways. It's a form of expression and creation as well.
Yeah, I think that's really important because, yeah, for me, this is the crux of everything, what you've just said there. How can we create a coherent, express ourselves? That idea in itself feels incoherent. And I think that this is something that maybe as we're coming into this final chapter, really, of the great story, and maybe this is something I'm going to be talking about on Weather Weird podcast soon with Pete, is really why has the big change not happened? Many of us are sat going, when is this going to kick off? When is it going to finally move? And I feel like we've got a point, like there's so much resistance in humanity to change. And many people want to avoid doing the work and just go straight to what they perceive as a bliss space, the happy space, maybe some kind of new age kumbaya guitar playing fireside experience, which is lovely and nothing wrong with that, but that's not quite what we're looking for here. My idea or vision of New Earth is something that's much more kind of higher mind, down into this reality. What is it that my higher mind and my heart can conjure with? What does my heart want to express? How does it come out of my throat, with my words? And actually also something else that I would like you to share is your process. You said is kind of being much more in the metaphysical space and bringing it back into the physical, whereas many people are probably trying to do the process the other way around. It's like, I'm in the physical, but I want to be metaphysical. Can you share anything around that? Because I think that that's a very important piece too about how we channel and manifest.
Sure. So because of all of the Pisces in my chart, I think I would credit everything to them. I've always found it easier to be in the metaphysical. I think the real world can be very cruel, and it's very hard for a soul that's sensitive. And I think a lot of people in the immersion are very sensitive. They feel the energies even if they can't quite place it. So it's been my hiding ground, like it's been my playground and the safe space that I go into. And through the whole process of channeling, I guess, when I first started, even before the immersion started, all of these pieces came through in pretty good flow. And when I reached the 7th piece, it stopped, and Elder Mother was like, okay, it's enough, like we're done. So I thought the immersion would continue in magical ways. I would get more into the elven realm and the music and all of that. And none of that happened. And I was like, oh, okay, like I'm not quite sure what's about to unfold. And what I then realized as I was looking back in the past week was that I started to see magic in the real world. So I was bringing that 5D kind of ethereal threads, and I was seeing it and bringing it into this world, and effectively in the way creating heaven on earth, in the sense that we are grounding in these new frequencies to where we are, so that we manifest it into reality and we get to actually share it with people. So I thought it was just really magical how Elder Mother worked her magic and sort of flipped it around and showed me how to bring it in here instead of being lost all the time in the ethereal state.
Wow, I love that, Shirley. That's beautiful. And I think this is the process that we are being shown with the Elder for those of us who have the clarity. And again, we can see why Dandelion, why Artemis is clearing the terrain, making sure that we are in a place of cleanliness and purity, so that when we have these beautiful images, visions, ideas, or prayers, they can be brought down into the manifest world and then actioned with our own energy. And I think that what you're sharing about the Elder experience is really beautiful, because if we have lots of amazing ideas, but we never have the space or the time or the energy to action them into the 3D, they just stay as ideas. They stay in the etheric realms. And what we're now being encouraged with the astrology, I believe, is to start having those clear visions, being able to express them without fear of ridicule, or maybe even just not having the right people to express them with. And I think many of us are realizing that through these immersions and the quantum plant space that we're creating or co-creating all together here, we're finding a space where we can share our experiences, our words, our images. And I think that's one of the most beautiful things that has been gathering pace from each immersion. And yeah, you are very Piscean, right? I think you have 4 planets. Please do tell if you're okay with that, Shirley, because it's pretty full on.
So I have Sun, Moon, Venus, and Mars all in Pisces. So yeah, it's all Pisces.
It's all Pisces, right? But what I love is that Sun and Moon, Venus and Mars is very balanced, yin and yang, masculine, feminine energy. And of course, I'm also Pisces rising. So I understand very clearly about the escaping into the metaphysical world. I've also spent most of my life more comfortable in that realm than this one. This has often been quite a hard from the more etheric Lemurian other world, Pleiadian, Elven world into this one. Have struggled with first of all, the density, and again, things like Epstein-Barr virus, the toxicity of metals, all of which the elves don't like, I think has been literally at some points for me, certainly a physically painful journey, but also, for those of us that have that deep connection to the earth, to see the wanton destruction and disregard that almost most of society across the planet has had for Mother Earth has been very, very challenging. And I think that often people like us who have the ability to escape into those worlds, or to return back to maybe what was a world that's more familiar to us, have found it difficult. But this has been part of the journey, I think, of reconciliation and coming into harmony with ourselves. So I think that's really beautiful. Yeah.
And in response to what you said, I think people have started, so over the years, people started suppressing themselves, right? Their true selves. And you cannot close your heart partially. When you start to do that, you start to suppress everything, including how you feel about the earth and how you treat people. And it all begins really with you and your relationship to your heart and to source. So in this state of expectorant and actually releasing that suppression, like, it's so important, because when we stop that, we start to really unlock that love and let that out, and it will permeate every part of our lives. It will permeate the food we eat, the things we choose to consume, the way we want to exist with earth, and the way we feel about the next tree that we see, providing you shelter and apples and whatever that is. So there's so much potential just waiting to be unlocked as soon as we release that suppression, I think.
Yeah, totally. And I think that this piece has all of that energy of the higher notes of what we can imagine. We can still recreate Shambhala here on Earth in the physical space, and somehow I think 5D is somehow bringing it down heaven on earth, because it's been done with unconditional love and from the heart space. So beautiful.
Yeah.
So let's pull up the next one, Shirley, because like you, I'm also conscious of time, and I know it's very late where you are.
I'm sorry. Oh no, that's fine. But yeah. Okay, so this piece, it's sort of I would say it's a piece that, as it appeared, it spoke to me about balance and cosmic mathematics. Those were the exact words that came to mind. And I don't really understand what that meant, but I understood it as a way of like saying sacred geometry and saying that the design of everything is really divine. Like nothing is random and everything is calculated, in the sense it's all been planned. There's a huge divine plan kind of a feel here. I don't know. Do you feel any of
that? Now I'm looking at it more detail and hearing your words. Yes, absolutely. I mean, again, the colors are interesting because the colors kind of speak to me in different ways. And pink is, again, a very feminine color. And I don't often, when I think of Elder Mother, although she's very feminine, because she's more like a wise old crone, I don't tend to think of these more youthful aspects of maybe feminine expression, like pinks. And yeah, I feel like maybe Elder is more of a purple than a pink. But when I look into the design, what I see is a plan or a blueprint, maybe even for a space or a place or something like that. I mean, right now I can't read it, but that's when I look at it, it's almost like looking at a floor plan of something, maybe even a place,
I think blueprint is a beautiful word for this piece. Yes.
Wow. Cool. All righty. Please do continue.
All right. So let's move on to the next two pieces, I think. All right. This piece.
Wow.
Yeah, this piece I really like. The blue of it, like it brings me back to the icy realm, which is a place that I'm really comfortable with. It's also speaking to me about winter and Elder in winter. And like it's almost snowflake in energy, like to me. But it's very interesting that it's contrasted with orange in the center, which is a really warm color. So as I was doing this piece, the words that came to me were ethereal and, very interestingly, nakedness. So the meaning of vulnerability, like the idea of stripping away everything and being just completely naked, in a sense, like just pure, like pure essence. So this is what this piece said to me. And right in the center of it, I'm still not sure if this is a white tiger or an ice dragon, but it's one of those beings. And I think people will see what they need to see, but it's definitely a very strong spirit animal in there.
What I love about the color between the blue and the orange is that when you're looking at it, it's almost like the piece is actually pulsing. It has almost an energetic pulse that draws you in and then pulls you back out. It's just like, whoa. Again, I get very, very strong mountain Tibetan energy with this one. Maybe it's the sort of more yantra style image, but there's something, yeah, again, very Tibetan about this. So it makes me think of like the snow lions, which again is a big symbol in Tibetan Buddhism.
Yeah.
And I love the idea of the strength around the core, the kind of, but then in the center, it's more soft and malleable, but then whoosh, right in the center of that, you've got this power animal, maybe. So this is very much about strength in vulnerability and being able to be strong even when vulnerable, which I think is a big step also on the journey, is how to show your vulnerable side, because so often that gets squashed again by ego. I can't show that I'm vulnerable. Maybe then that shows people that I'm weak. And if I'm showing people that I'm weak, maybe they're going to exploit me or attack me or manipulate me. And again, I think this is something that we also, as a society, need to look at, is like, how can I express my vulnerability in safety? And I think, again, what we're seeing with the container for the immersion is that when we do these plant diets, part of the space holding is to create a space where we can all feel vulnerable and express ourselves without fear of being laughed at or somehow put down, because that's all that does is add to the trauma. And so rather than that, we want to create a space where we can bring up and feel good enough to say, oh my gosh, this is what's been going on for me in my life. Because once it's spoken out, often that's a large part of the healing right there, is being able to speak something that's been suppressed for so long you can't even find the words to say it. And I feel that maybe this image is really giving us that inner strength, that power animal, the snow lion. I love that. It really is right there for me, to be able to again speak our truth and be vulnerable in the moment, but then afterwards take strength from the fact that we were able to be brave and courageous and share these things from our lives and our wounding.
Yeah. And I kind of had that come up for me as a repeating theme as well through this immersion, even this conversation. So, I've been putting out work on Instagram for 2 years now, and there's been over 1,000 pieces that have gone out into the world, and I have never appeared on camera because I always felt like I'm Asian. I am a girl. I'm not your traditional sort of an influencer kind of a person. So I never thought I wanted to appear on camera because and I never wanted to speak about my art in person because it's such a private place. This thing comes from somewhere really deep within. And it's very hard for me to explain to people that I don't actually do this. I'm simply the vessel, and I'm just sharing what comes, but it comes from a very deep place within. And if I were hearing myself, I'll probably think I was delusional or crazy or schizophrenic. So, I've always had so much resistance, but over and over again through this immersion, Elder Mother had said, like, I'm going to create the opportunities for you, and all you need to do is say yes. You only need to say yes, but you cannot shy away from it. So again, with the throat chakra piece, a lot of it is about expressing our true selves. And it doesn't really matter what the world thinks. It matters that you were, honest enough with yourself to express it. And you just have to let it out in the world. And I think that was a big piece for me through this immersion as well with Elder Mother.
Wow, amazing. Thank you for being brave, Shirley, and coming on and doing this with me. Also, many people would think that, I've been able to do these kinds of interviews and stuff forever. And the truth is that I also had a trauma from childhood about public speaking that took me nearly 2 decades to get over. And it's only in the last 5 or 6 years, and particularly in the last couple of years with working with the plants, particularly Elder. Elder was the first plant that I was really able to channel in a retreat, most profound experience a couple of years ago. And there were some difficult situations that came up in the retreat because we were dealing with psychopomp and crossing over of various beings. And, there was a moment where I was like, how are we going to do all of this like work that we had to do in the retreat with crossing over deceased beings that everyone had brought to the retreat? And Elder Mother then just kicked in. She said, okay, I'm going to talk to you right now, and I want you to ask them this and this and do this and this and this, and it's all going to be fine. I was like, really? And she said, yeah, just trust me, just do what I say. So that was and then from that point onwards, I felt her right behind me on my shoulder and kind of gently pushing, but at the same time supporting and going, you can do this, it's fine, I'm here, what have you got to worry about? And I think that since I started working with Dandelion more this year, You know, I never really wanted to have a YouTube channel or any of these things that I seem to be doing right now. And yet something was like telling me this, like, okay, now you're going to have something that you really want to say. Before, not so much. Whereas now, like you, with the plants working through me, I'm able to express more from that space with myself getting out of the way most of the time, maybe not all the time. But yeah, so I really want to honor you, Shirley, for stepping up and doing this today with us and feeling safe enough to share in our group. I feel that's a huge privilege for all of us to be experiencing. So I love this piece. I think it's great.
And I thank you for doing your YouTube channel, because you know that was how I found you, through Pam's work and then through all of the work, so that I could be here. And you know, even as you're talking about it, I think trust is a huge piece of Elder Mother. And even as we're speaking right now, I can feel like the back of my head and my neck is just completely warm. Like it's just really, really warm, like you're cuddled in a way. Okay, cuddling maybe not the right word, but you know, like it's a safe space.
Safe space, right?
Creates that for us.
Wow. Okay. Please do share the next image too, Shirley.
All right. Let's go to the very last piece, which when it came through, it was a little bit like a whoosh type. I was like, oh my God, like really, we're gonna end with this. So the keywords that came through this is power. I think that's, well, definitely very clear. Inner fires. So the previous piece spoke about winter and how Elder Mother actually, she survives winter, and that blue that is kind of wintry for the previous piece contrasted with that warmth of that orange. It speaks more clearly through this piece, even though it's kind of reversed as the inner fires that we have. It also speaks about the idea that it's the light within, you know, the inner fires, the warmth, the light, it all comes from that soul essence, that light that is really within us, that thing that's burning within us. And this piece offers us the opportunity to really get to that place. And through all of the stuff that we spoke about, the revealing the inner core wounding, to release the suppression, to let things out. This is the gateway that really opens into transformation, transmutation, and then the phoenix rising. Like it will get you to that place, but you've got to go through the process. Like in the earlier piece, the darkness is needed. You know, we know this. You have to go through the dark night of the soul in order to find the light within. It's never outside of you. It's always inside of you. So everything just had to go black for a while so that you can realize, oh my God, I am the light. I am the light, I am the flame, you know, and this piece just, it's hard to find words sometimes. But
It's
yeah.
incredible. Yeah. I mean, as we've gone on the journey looking at the pieces today, and this has been a fascinating exploration of feeling into the energies of the pieces, and also seeing the journey that Elder is wanting to share with you and through you with us. What I get is a process of death and rebirth. And this piece is the rebirth. It's like the last piece now, I'm thinking about it more. It's like, well, you've gone into the inner space. It is very much about winter. It's cold and blue outside, but inside the warmth is still there. The light is still there. But also there's that sense of vulnerability and work that has to be done on the inner space so that we can arise like the Scorpio turning into the Phoenix and heading to the eagle's perch with all of this wonder and color and amazement and warmth, and right at the center is the light. You know, I see that's almost like the heart for me, that's connecting to my higher mind, and everything around that is what my heart wants to express. And this, I mean, I think that the colors are absolutely stunning, Shirley. I mean, I love all the pieces, but as a conclusion to this series, I think that this one has so much, and I hope that everyone who's watching this and seeing the pieces can find something within this piece for themselves that maybe inspires them, that spring is only just around the corner. And of course, there is always winter before spring. There is always darkness before the dawn. And then when the sun rises again, maybe we can arise with the sun, with a new expression in our heart, a new sense of light, a new sense of creativity. And I think for me, that's what this piece says. It's really stunning, Shirley. It really is.
Yeah. And I think, you know, for anyone who feels called.
So for the last, yeah, was going to say, for the last few minutes, let's bring the picture down and we can just have a little bit of a chat to wrap things up. There's so many more things. I mean, you know, this has been a whistle-stop tour, really, and already it's, wow, we've almost covered an hour. But how would you like to share the conclusion of the journey with the people who are on the immersion and watching this, or maybe join the immersion down the road, Shirley? Because I think that what you've channeled here is something very much of New Earth, very much of the light codes of the plants. And yeah, you know, I remember when we first spoke and you came to me, you're like, am I crazy? Am I channeling plants? Or, you know, am I just making all of this up? And I think after about 5 minutes of the conversation, let them know the plants are 100% with you for sure. And I think this is part of the opening up of expressing ourselves, right? You know, maybe putting these self-doubts behind us and receiving, or, you know, having the world reflect back to us what it is in our hearts, and allowing other people to see it and them to mirror back to us something that has come from with us. I think it's so important.
Yes. You know, for anyone, I think, who feels called to sit with the pieces, you don't have to sit there and meditate or dissect the piece. Like, that's not the way, right? Like, these pieces work on a quantum level. Like, just sit with it, just leave it somewhere, just look at it when you feel like it, and things will come to you. And I think, in a nutshell, that's exactly how the entire immersion has felt to me. Like, you don't have to focus and concentrate and read 3,000 books about Elder Mother to try to understand her. You just need to trust her and really just, as you say, invite her in and set the intention to say, you know, I would love to work with you if you would grace me with your love. And just trust that it is done, and it will just reveal. It's such a easy process in a way. It's not, it's really just, it's not meant to be difficult. It's not meant to be, you know, trials and tribulations. It's really more about trust and surrender at this point, I think.
Right. Yeah. And, you know, Louise from Australia was saying on the live call about the immersion really is about telling stories. And it is, you know, rather than do what many courses and stuff have done before, which is to give out lots of handouts and things you have to memorize. It's like, no, these immersions right from the beginning, we're coming from a different space. It's like, no, we want to give people jump off points, light bulbs, whether it's through the discussions, whether it's through photos of the plants, whether it's through the artwork, whether it's through written. Some people have been writing poems. All of that is all part of the story or the gestalt that collectively we've all created for the immersions. And sure, maybe me and Bella are holding the energetic space with the plants and the wave spells, and Josh is holding the space for the website, but the group is holding the space together. And as we've done one immersion to next, those of us who've done you know, one or more of them, or, you know, maybe all three of them, is we're creating, and still the immersions are being created, even though the Dandelion and the Artemisia have finished, they're still accessible. The information is still 100% relevant, but more people are going in and adding their energy to it. So we're also building the collective quantum story that is now coming through from the plants. And what you said is so true. It's like, in the end, you know, when I do the transmissions and the interviews with everybody, we often don't have so much preparation. We're just in the moment and let the plants come through, again, like we've done today, and just try to find the touching points that make sense to us and maybe make sense to other people. And I think this is amazing. You know, as a conclusion to today's talk, we've managed to very much embrace the energy of the wave spell today with the art and beauty that you've channeled and shared with us. And then also, I know we've talked before, myself, you and Bella, about collaborating with the plants and with the artwork. And, you know, just as a final piece, I'd like you to share what you're going to be up to during the year immersion, because I think it's mind-blowing. So just as a final piece, you know.
Okay, just before that, I wanted to respond to something that you said. As you were saying, I got the idea that this is real co-creation. This is us co-creating with the plants and with each other, and creating a new web of energy. And the stories that we share, it's not about memorizing it off a book anymore. It's really about, you know, sort of integrating it within ourselves and then letting that express as a story, because that's how we learn, that's how we process. And these stories that we share with each other then becomes fractals, doesn't it? It's like a whole tapestry, and we're just fractals reflecting to each other, seeing the different dimensions of this multidimensional energy, this quantum energy. So that's just, I think it's the new way of us connecting with each other, rather than I publish a book and you shall memorize every single word I say in it, you know, like, yeah. So That aside, I am also looking forward to the immersion because, as I said, I share with you, I think it's very Piscean somehow. Like you feels like Pisces to me. And I already know that there will be 9 pieces. So there will be 3 phases. Each phase will have 3, and we'll be using this triad of energy. And I know 3 is a magic number. So we'll be sort of honing in the trinity of all of it. But I am not going to start channeling yet because in exactly a month's time, I'm traveling to Iceland and I'm going to be there for 4 months. And as you had shared with me, not you, as in you, Davyd, there is a lot of old world mythology associated with the yew tree, the world tree, the tree of knowledge. And I wanted to get myself there before letting the energy flow through so that I can channel it and then share it out into the world. So I'm really excited about that. I think, being called to the Antarctica quite unwittingly and never knowing what to expect brought me to one end of the world. And right now I'm given the opportunity to get to another end of the world and possibly somewhere quite close to a ley line, I think, a dragon line. So there is magic at work. I don't know what it is, but I am happy to be at the extreme ends of the world and being in an eternal winter. I think that's right up my alley. So yeah,
Wow.
looking forward to that.
Wow. And just as a final thought from my side, you said it yourself that maybe being Asian, being female, people might look at you and put you into a certain box. And having spoken to you on a number of occasions now, it's like I get a whole different energy completely from what people might think, typically would be that kind of person. It's like, what kind of person goes to Antarctica, then goes to Iceland for winter in the middle of everything that's going on to channel the you? I think that's a person who knows exactly what they are doing, who's very much in the space. And when I think about your energy and going to Antarctica and putting an anchor point there and then going to Iceland, which is really kind of the closest we can get, I guess, to the North Pole, what I see is the toroidal field of the earth being held with the yew tree, which is Yggdrasil, the tree of eternity, who really is also the embodiment of a toroidal field, both for us, in my work, and I'll be showing more of this in the immersion. It's really about us becoming the you, becoming the tree of eternity, becoming all that is, and being able to channel that with the hollow bone that Elder helped us create inside. And when we have that, there is pretty much nothing that we can't do. So I think that's really beautiful. And I'm really hoping that we're going to be able to do another one of these live, hopefully from the deep, dark void of Iceland in winter, which I am feeling is probably going to be quite dark and quite cold. But with your light and your work and your expression, that warmth can radiate out from wherever you are on the planet, but certainly for any of us. And I think that it's going to be quite the mission to get there from Singapore. I know we talked about it beforehand, and that in itself is another one of those kinds of seeker's journeys or a hero's journey, which is filled with magic, possibly filled with apprehension at the journey ahead. Also going to a place like Iceland that is pure creation energy, volcanic fire and ice energy, lots of dragon energy there, lots of elven energy. I think you're going to love it personally. And I'm super excited to see what comes through in this triple trinity series of pieces you're going to be bringing. So it's just a final moment where, what's your Instagram page, Shirley, where people can find out other images that you've done?
So it would be Lemurian Dreamweaver, which I'm not sure if you guys can see, which would be my screen name.
Yep.
Yeah, at Instagram. So yeah.
Wow, perfect. Well, look, thank you so much for taking time out, especially so late in your day, and for sharing. I know that many people have been looking at the pictures and commenting, and also perhaps taking more in, but to have the artist himself who channeled it talk about them, I think is another way of opening up the images, and certainly it's given me a lot to think about. So thank you, Shirley. Thank you, everybody, for listening. And yeah, we're now into the final couple of days of the immersion and the wave spell. And I love the idea of the collaboration. And I think that if we can all start to express what we've got, I mean, it's so beautiful to see people expressing in the group. And I'm sure that many other transmissions and collaborations will come from other people too. And I welcome that because it's all part of what we're doing. So thank you, everybody. And we'll see you again soon for the next transmission. Ciao for now.